Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later as now it's time for today's Toy of the Week video. Now we're into our 6th week of these, which is great, and we've had what I hope is a fairly decent spread of different bots from Generation 1 and 2. I guess if I'm being honest, I'm not really choosing these robots based on any particular criteria, other than just, looking at my collection and seeing what takes my fancy week on week. But hopefully that's working for everyone so far. Of course, if there are any toys that you'd like to hear a bit more about, then please let me know either in the comments here or on social media, and I'll see what I can do. I suppose I should stress that, counter to what some people seem to think, I don't actually collect every Transformer. My focus is typically Generation 1 and 2, and then modern masterpiece stuff as well. But if you can think of something that you fancy hearing me ramble on a bit about, then just give me a shout. And, if you're not entirely done with me pining on about Generation 1 toys, then don't forget to check out the Great Cybertronian Write-Off, which is a bit of a collaboration project I'm doing with fellow photographers Transformers Square 1 and Toybox Soapbox, as well as our design guru, Tiknat. And we're posting daily mini reviews of classic G1 figures on social media. You can find it using the hashtag GCWO on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We've just finished the 1984 line of toys, and we're set to start with 1985 today, so be sure to check that out. Right, now it's time to get cracking with our Toy of the Week, which today is none other than the classic pretender, Starscream. Released in 1989, classic pretender Starscream sees the infamously treacherous Decepticon brought back to life with a completely new toy, now equipped with a humanoid pretender shell. Starscream is without a doubt one of the most well-known and recognizable characters from the entirety of the Transformers franchise. His original toy was released in 1984 and was a design recycled from Diaclone, although it's since gone on to become one of the most repainted Transformers toys of all time. His classic Pretender release reimagines that original design from the ground up, also throwing in inspiration from his cartoon appearance to create an entirely new look, although one that still screams Starscream. He was released alongside 3 other Pretender classics, although as the only Decepticon, he was rather outnumbered by the Autobots, Grimlock, Jazz, and Bumblebee. Now, whilst today it's commonplace for well-known characters like this to get a new toy every few years, if not more, back in Generation 1, it was a different story. In fact, the classic Pretenders were only the second example of previously established characters being given a new toy, with the first being Power Master Optimus Prime the year prior. The only other instance of this happening during Generation 1 was in the Action Master line in 1990, which saw a whole host of familiar faces brought back to life with non-transforming figures, including Starscream and the other classic Pretenders. That of course means that with 3 toys each, they and Optimus have the honour of being the most commonly used characters during the whole of the original toy line. The inner Starscream toy itself is a fairly simple thing here, being significantly smaller than his original figure and featuring about as much articulation, with solid legs, no head rotation of any kind, and arm movement only available at the shoulders, although a hinge joint does mean that they can be swung from side to side, so that's something. Still, what it lacks in motion, it more than makes up for with style, also giving Starscream a bit of a makeover in the process. He now has entirely blue boots, solid blue arms, a black cockpit on his chest, as well as a grey helmet and a black face, which is in contrast to his original toy and indeed the character's animation model, where these shades were reversed. As a side point, it's worth highlighting that his Action Master toy from the year after features the same exact colour scheme, meaning that it's most definitely intended to be a non-transforming version of the Pretender Starscream design. In terms of weaponry, Starscream is now sporting a pair of handheld blasters instead of his usual arm-mounted null rays, and they double as the rear fins for his jet mode. They can also be stored on the back of his legs in robot mode, should you absolutely wish. In addition, the wings are removable, a process required both for his transformation and for storing him away inside his Pretender shell, meaning that in keeping with the original Seeker design, he's very much a parts former. In fact, other than repositioning the wings and the guns, the transformation here is essentially just putting the arms to his side and flipping up the nose cone, making it an absolute bubble. The vehicle mode is intended to represent his established F-15 fighter jet form, although the proportions on this toy are a little squished to say the least. Still, for a small little thing, he's surprisingly fun and features some nice moulding on the top of the jet to boot. Interestingly, the inner robot was also released in a separate package without the Pretender shell, and alongside the other classic Pretender robots was part of the Legends line, which was exclusively available in Kmart in 1989. Of course, that distinctive Pretender shell is part of the main draw for this release, especially as it's quite unusual for Decepticons in that it resembles a human face instead of a monster of some kind. The shell is a really menacing design, cast in teal and absolutely covered in spikes. It doesn't particularly resemble Starscream in any fashion, with the possible exception of the boob vents, but it looks suitably menacing and has a brilliant fed-up expression that just makes me think, yeah, same. Like all Pretender shells, it's entirely motionless except for the arms, and is sadly very prone to paint wear. Still, in nice condition, this thing makes a definite first impression, and even features a couple of stickers to be applied for that little extra something. It utilises the standard Pretender method of splitting the shell in half and folding up the small robot to fit inside, before clipping it all back together tidily as one whole package. Starscream has a bit of a twist though, in that you can store his robot wings on the back of his shell and even attach his smaller guns to the side of the large blue rifle that he's packing to give him a bit of extra armament. Nice touch. Overall, it's a neat and tidy package that makes this a worthwhile second effort in a long line of Starscream toys, standing out as one of the more unusual entries on that list. Starscream was of course heavily featured in Transformers media and had already become one of the more prominent characters in the cartoon by the time this toy was ready for release, before being famously killed off in the 1986 animated feature The Transformers the Movie. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, by the way. Sadly, the Pretender version of this character arrived too late to feature, although he did crop up rather memorably in the Marvel comic storyline instead. There, he's resurrected by Decepticon leader Megatron, having himself just returned from the dead for neither the first nor the last time. Starscream was previously killed off after his body had exploded from taking on the power of the underbase, and here, Megatron forces captured Autobot medic Ratchet to use the Pretender shell as a method of reviving him. In a bit of a departure from the toy, Starscream looks identical to how he originally appeared prior to being a Pretender in the comic, although we're told that the shell gives him a lot of additional power. Sadly, and in rather typical Transformers fashion, Starscream's new shell ends up being the sort of gimmick of the week, as it's shown as being all impressive and magnificent for a handful of issues before disappearing completely, never to be seen again, despite the character himself continuing to be prominent for the remainder of the overall storyline. Still, he does get his own insightful black and white B-plot storyline in the UK's extended run, as issue 248's Fallen Star shows the traitorous Decepticon to have a crisis of confidence after his return in souped-up Pretender form. He soon overcomes that, however, and is back to his dastardly ways before you know it. So I think I've mentioned online a few times about how Pretenders didn't really grab me much as a concept when I was a kid. Like a lot of fans, I just never really gelled with the idea of Transformers inside organic shells for one reason or another, and the toys didn't really do much for me either. I guess it's interesting then that they've become some of my favourite things to collect as an adult, and of all the examples I've appreciated with a new eye, Starscream has actually ended up being one of my favourites. It's a very simple toy in a lot of senses, and overall it doesn't really do anything particularly unexpected or shocking as far as Pretenders go, But it's interesting to see how they reinterpreted that well-known original Seeker design for a new toy, and how they imagined him looking as a humanoid Pretender shell. So in many ways, I think it's a bit of a shame that they never repainted this guy for use as Skywarp or Thundercracker as well. I mean, I really like the play value on offer here, with the wings and weapons able to store on the shell when you've got the robot inside of it, meaning that there are never any bits left over. I guess an exception to that, because to be honest, I never install any of the hats or helmets on my Pretenders typically, for fear of rubbing the paint, amongst other things. Now that may be a bit silly to some, but it's just how it rolls in my house. Oh, and for one final bit of interest, although it's a bit of a shame that Pretender Starscream never cropped up in the animation itself, he did appear as an animated model in this classic Pretender advert. So let's take a look at that.
Optimus Prime is under attack. He needs the greatest Transformers ever.
Optimus, we're here as Pretenders!
Jazz, Bumblebee, you're back! And me, Grimlock!
And the evil Starscream is here too.
Beyond anything you've ever seen before. Transformer Classic Pretenders!
The greats are here as Pretenders, Classic Pretender Transformers, Jazz, Bumblebee, Starscream, and Grimlock.
Me, Grimlock, attack! Transformers!
So that's classic Pretender Starscream for you. Thank you again for watching, and if you haven't yet, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Maybe check out some of my other videos whilst you're at it. As well as this Toy of the Week series, I have a couple of unboxing videos and another project in mind, although more on that another time. Quick final shout out to everyone who already supports me on Patreon. Details are coming up at the end of the video, so if you would like to do the same, of course, it's really appreciated. That's it from me. Enjoy the rest of your day, and TTFN.